I'm knee deep into the wiring and running the wires and figuring out how to do it. Stefan's gonna be sitting behind the laptop and figuring out which plugs go into where and trigger whatever. Cause
you're knee deep and I'm gonna be balls deep.
I get asked a seemingly simple question quite often, and the debates on this question can get pretty interesting. That question is simply, should I crimp or should I solder? My quick answer is almost always going to be to crimp. There are pros and cons associated with each. Whatever method you choose, just remember a couple simple things, and that's to do it properly. Leave your wire nuts in your house, your T-taps in the trash can, and the twist and tape methods to your competition.
Alright, so we had some major issues with Quattro Debocho and Super Speeders Rob Project Card Challenge. Biggest one right off the bat was our cooling system. We had oil going into the turbos, which was another system, fuel management, boost control, and engine management. We're working on each system at the same time. It just takes a while to accumulate all the parts, the right fittings, the right whatever we need. We're gonna take each system that let us down, explain how we're gonna fix it. So we got Lyle to bend us up. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Everything is coming together real nice. Now we're on to the wiring. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. All right, so when you're getting into a project, whether it be building a car from scratch, updating something that's already on it, or building something from IKEA, or building a house, projects can get overwhelming, and it's hard. When we first started, there was boxes on the entire bench, could barely work out of it. But start with what you know. You know that the wastegate goes right here, and you know that these solenoids need to be close to the wastegate. You know that the water pump has to go at the back somewhere. All the fuel mat and those fittings need to go inside the tank. The fuel pump and the filters and that need to go there. So just tackle it kind of one thing at a time and then go from there. Start with what you know and just kind of eliminate things one at a time, and the project won't be so daunting. Now this is our, we kind of went balls to the wall on this one. So, and I've never really got too overwhelmed other than running out of time and working a lot of late nights. But we've got the cooling system figured out, getting some pipe bent up for that. We did our boost control, we did our exhaust, we did our fuel system. Everything is coming together real nice. Now we're on to the wiring. Now, everybody loves wiring. Let's get into it. Now, before you do anything, what you're gonna wanna do is download the V4, and that is your magic buddy right there, this help button. I know we're guys and we don't wanna ask for help, but honestly, work your butt off trying to install all the hard pieces, work late hours, and then when you're so tired you can't lift your hand anymore, you can still lift a finger. Put that on your laptop, go into the house, lay on the couch, and just scroll through the help system. Start going through each system that is outlined in there, starting with wiring, and it might not make 100% sense to you, but when you get into it, you're like, oh, I remember something about that, and I remember this. There's also the Holley training school, which we found very beneficial. But there's a lot of stuff in there that they can't cover, and all of that is in the help section. So there's a search button, wiring, boost solenoids, basic tune, advanced tuning, all the fun stuff is in there. Doesn't make you an expert. Nothing trumps years of experience, and I'm gonna admit that too. But let's try and tackle this together. So here we go. So the ECU is mounted here. The main thing is that the wires are easily to get at. Nobody's gonna kick it. We got the roll bar in the way, so we're not gonna.
And if you need to hold it in place with your feet, you have that option.
So when we were driving in Daytona, or no, that was a Sebring. Sebring, because the track is so bumpy, I just had the ECU Velcroed to the side there, and it kept falling down. So whoever was getting rides had to kind of hold the ECU in place.
I caught it with my feet. I caught it with like both feet and cradled it while we were driving around. It was kind of fun though. Because usually as a passenger, you got nothing to do. But at least I got to hold the ECU. I was a crucial part to the lap time, right?
Anyway, we've got her securely bolted to the side there.
Look at this. Look at this. One of a kind CAD drawing I did to mount these stupid things.
Stefan is mounting the main ignition switch and the starter button up top there. We're gonna move them from down here to up there.
And the scavenge pump relay.
No.
It's gonna be controlled by the ECU.
Yeah, it's basically just ignition on and off, and like when the thing catches fire and we're upside down, it's like quickly accessible to turn everything off. But anyway,
Nice.
the ECU needs to have its own power supply to the battery. So a dual post battery is kind of the best way to go, where you can feed your main starter and your ignition and everything off of the one post, and then the ECU needs to have its own ground and positive all the way back to the battery. And the reason for that is the battery's a capacitor. It holds all the voltage and amperage. And when you're putting different loads on it, when pumps are kicking on and off, when you're cranking it over, it does affect the amount going to the computer itself. So the battery kind of softens all that and kind of protects it. And noise.
And frequency feedback and blah, 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 blah.
Right. So basically, Tom really emphasized, the Holley training really emphasized that we need to have its own power wires, so we don't argue, we just do it.
We're gonna argue anyway, though.
Yeah. So that's going up there. Oh, that looks pretty good.
Not bad.
Nice. Nice. Look at that.
Let's hot snot this thing in place.
Alright. So he's running that. We're running this. I'm going to keep going with the wiring. I'll lengthen the wires on the engine itself so it's nice and clean. And then the one thing I didn't like from the Holley thing, I don't know whether I missed it or what, there's no plug for the alternator. So I got to add my own plug for that. Hopefully there's a pinout on the ECU for that. Okay, I got our computer. It was tucked up on the side here, but to take a better look at the plugs, just laid it down, made sure their wiring harness was the right length, figure out which wires go where. And then we've got our wiring harness is going to come out here real nice. We've got our inputs and outputs ready to go. But we'll start with the basics, basically at the front of it here, and these wires here. So we need to give this red and black wire battery power, which is these ones right here. So I'm gonna start where it all starts, and that's the ignition switch. Now, Stefan made this handy dandy little box, but I went and pulled all of these out because they're just spade connectors and replaced them with toggle switches that have screws. I used this wire, it's a 6-7 wire out of a trailer plug, so I got 7 wires to work with and a nice loom already that I don't have to cover up. And it's nice heavy duty. It's all 12 gauge wiring because it's off one of the trucks that I pulled into the yard. Nice Dodge truck. Well, not a nice Dodge truck, nice Cummins and a Dodge. Anyway, what I did was I put a terminal on the corner here to feed just a few wires. The light's on the yellow on its own brown wire, so I'll feed those through a fuse down below beside my main feed. I've got blue for wipers because I want to see the sky, and the brown one is the bottom for that, so I'll run that on its own. Or was that black? Black, sorry. This red one I did off of the main feed, so I ran one red wire over to here, the main power. From there it goes over to the ignition switch. Ignition goes over to starter. Green is for start, green is go, start, and then that goes fed back down again. So this wire will go straight to the starter. And then the other red wire I put on the last toggle switch, but I don't even know where that goes. That's the white wire, so I'll have a white wire just as a spare. And I didn't replace the last toggle. So I've got 3 toggle switches. Now, before this was ignition, that was fuel pump, that was scavenge, and the last one was the wiper. All those are gone now because the computer does all of that. But we're just gonna leave the lights and the wipers on its own toggle switch for now, until I don't know, they're here, might as well use them. So, here we go. We'll go mount that up top and start running the wires nice and neat. Here we go. Okay, so this is your main engine harness. We'll go over it real quick. Looks complicated, but it's not. Everything's labeled. You got your 2 plugs that go into your computer, and if you get those, plug them in the wrong spot, you are special and you deserve to have your car burnt to the ground because they only go in one spot. The red with the white stripe is needs to go to switched power. So this needs to have power while it's cranking over, or the run position. If your car won't start, this little wire could be the issue. The black one is relay ground, I believe. There's a relay for the fuel injectors, I believe. These is a fuse for the injectors. This is your CAN bus, so this plugs into your dash. From there, you've got an input output, and there's a plug that we have that connects to that has nice long leads that will be our inputs for like sensors, outputs for like to turn the fans on. This red wire is the main wire that feeds this relay for the injector, so this needs to have battery positive all the time. You can hook that up to your battery. The green wire turns your fuel pump on, but we need to hook that up to a relay because our fuel pump draws more than 10 amps. The blue and white wire, I'm not sure what it does, but that's okay. We can do one of 2 things. We can call Holley Tech, we can comb over wiring diagrams to see where it is, or we'll just leave it for now and we'll probably run into it at some point, and that's okay. The Holley Tech line is always there for your questions. Anyway, be nice to them. We got an oil pressure sensor. Now that's not long enough for me. I'm gonna put it into our valley here. This is a 5.3 block out of an 06, but it actually has a 24 tooth cam. But our oil pressure sensor, we got to drill through. We took away all the DOD in it. The oil pressure sensor, we'll have to tap that into there. We've got our NOx sensors, so I got to figure out how to do that because we've got the NOx sensors on the side. Because I'm complicated that way. Now I redid the harness a little bit. I shortened these wires because basically your manifold should be pointing the other way, but we do things backwards here with Audi. And then everything else is labeled. You can't really screw it up. Keep in mind that your ignition and your fuel injectors are even and odd. So they're clearly marked for whatever cylinders they have. So don't mess those up. And it's easy peasy. Make sure that your crank stays away from your coil packs. You want to keep that nice and clean. For the wiring on the engine, we need to have a good ground going to the head and a big cable connecting the 2 heads together, because now that we've put a head gasket in between, a lot of the grounds come there. There's grounds labeled, cylinder head ground only. So we got to keep that in mind. Other than that, I need to extend my cam as well because my cam sensor now comes out the front cover. And I think that's about it. So what I'm gonna do now is take this manifold off of this block and put it on our dummy block just for now so we can start running the wiring nice and neat. We've got our computer mounted so we can figure out which wires need to go where for that, and then we'll start putting the proper connections on for like the grounds and all the positives and whatever else. So here we go. I think we're done with the wiring, so I can pull this manifold back off and put it back on the actual engine and then cover up the loom and make sure it's nice and neat, and then go from there. Now I got to mount a relay box at the back. So this thing we also got off the interweb somewhere. It's a marine one, so it's sealed, rubber sealed, whatever, which is good. And then it's got the top row for fuses, the bottom row for relays, and it takes these relays, which are much better than the old style, and you can put the big ones in. It's got room for the big ones, even though we have to sacrifice 1 or 2. Then let's see, there we go. It's plugged in like that. Thanks to Tools for an unlimited supply of relays, and then the smaller ones as well. So we'll see what we need, but for now we're going to mount it. You do need to leave a little space at the back to plug the wires in. So we'll probably mount it back here somewhere, and then nice and close to the battery so we can get our power going in, and then our power going right back out again to all the gadgets going on underneath this car. Then from there, I opened up my harness and rerouted a bunch of stuff because it kind of wide off and made a big mess back here. So I put everything all in one corner. Everything's nice and tight, and I made it so that everything is unpluggable. I ran my oil pressure sensor over to that side right there, if you can see it. I had to also tap into A18, I believe, for ground for my knock sensors. So they're on either side. So basically, I have to undo 2 grounds back here, and then all these plugs are nice on the back corner, and then my knock sensors, my crank, and my starter, and the whole engine's ready to come out. So it's very straightforward. You leave everything on top of the engine, and this whole harness stays with the car. If we have to pull our engine, or more like when, because I'm sure we'll do that at some point. So let's get this in the car. Here we go. Okay, so it looks messy, but it's not that bad. On our engine here, I had the clamp roughly where I had it on that one, so I know kind of the length of the wires I need. I'm not hooking anything up to this block because it's not the block that's going in here. There's no point. Comes through a grommet in the firewall here, and then it comes out here. And then hook up what you know. This red one goes to battery positive. Now originally I just had a top post here. I need a solenoid that turns on. The red wire going up to my main control box, there you see it hanging, will go to the battery positive. That in turn will turn those switches on, and will also turn this white wire on. When I turn this white wire on, the solenoid will connect this one, making this entire fuse box key power. When that's key power, the red and white stripe one turns on. That turns your Dominator on. The green wire is a start, obviously. The white wire here is coming back, so that's my trigger wire going to the solenoid. Now be careful, because if you're going by a solenoid, you got to get a continuous duty. The snowplow ones, they're only meant to go on for the 10 seconds it takes to move the plow, and you'll burn them out if you leave them on for longer than 10 minutes. Hopefully we can last longer than 10 minutes, so we need a solenoid that can last hours and hours. It's got positive on the back here with this wire, and then these are all the ground, so we'll just put a ground stud, we'll weld a stud somewhere really good and solid, and then run a good ground wire over to that, so all the grounds can go to these terminals here. Sorry that I'm not making videos continuously, but a time lapse is just me walking back and forth. I got my head going into the wiring, and then I see it, and then something changes, and I have to remember what I'm doing and not forget something, otherwise it's not gonna work. So anyway, it should turn the computer and the screen on with this magic button. Let's see what happens. Oh, that looks good. Nice. Come back on, yes, yes. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. No data, obviously, because nothing's really plugged into the engine, and it doesn't know all the other ones that I actually plugged in already. So, an Audi with a Holley. I love it. Look, there's a picture of an engine on my screen. This is crazy. Anyway, that's for tomorrow to screw around with, because I'm tired. It's midnight. I'm gonna go home to the house. So we've got our main battery cables that go up to our key switch. From there it goes to the starter, and then from the starter it goes to a solenoid that gets turned on, and that will turn the whole car on. They couldn't stress this enough, that you run the wires directly to the battery on its own terminals from the ECU. So from there, we've got a stack of wires that are going along the side rail, and everything will basically end up along the side here. The battery cable mainly goes to the starter, and then it comes back up into our main kind of wiring area right here. These pumps only draw 6 amps, but the computer itself can't handle anything more than 2 amps, so it can handle the relays, it can't handle the pumps itself. So we put a relay in line just so that we can tell the computer, if you see pressure at the turbos, then you turn the scavenge pumps on.
We got some wiring done, and we wanted to boot up the ECU. We were having a little bit of problems doing that, so I had to come back in. The PC and ECU weren't talking to each other yet, so I had to update the software on the computer, and then I was able to reflash the ECU. It seemed like it didn't even have like the software or anything on the ECU yet, so flashed it with the new software, boom, worked right away, and it was actually quite easy once I updated. So
definitely going to the Holley training has helped me a lot to like navigate my way around this, because I have little to no experience doing software on fuel injected cars, but it's coming along. I'll be a pro by the end of the week, right? And LS Fest, I'll be tuning people's cars really badly. So once I downloaded the new software, I could reflash the ECU to the newest firmware. It started working. Then we had a little bit of a problem because we have the 7-inch touchscreen dash, which is awesome. It looks really cool. I'm excited to use it, but it wouldn't talk to the ECU, so then we had to reflash that. Once that took a couple hours to figure out, it updated actually quick and fine. Everything is talking to each other now, they're all happy. And then we could really get down to the brass tacks of figuring out what wires do what. My beautiful writing there.
I'm gonna push a button and it's go time.
Yeah.
Just
The
put to
start
the floor.
button, that's the only button. If it's not running, he can't go anywhere, so he can't screw up by pushing the one start button. It's really cool, actually. It's given me a lot of confidence in wiring a car. I was the kind of guy, you put a carb on it and then away you go, right? I really like it because you can measure and monitor everything. You can stop your car from blowing up, which is a big problem with us. You can run all your sensors off the same power supply and the ground. There's a dedicated ground that goes to the ECU for all of the sensors.
Yeah.
And you can run as many off it as you want. It's just kind of weird for me to think about that when like doing house wiring or other kind of wiring, you run individual
11
grounds.
total.
Yeah.
Or is
Yeah.
it 12 now?
Yeah.
It is a lot to take in, but the
Yeah.
Holley training was definitely worth
Oh,
it.
100%. Like,
Yeah.
I would have no idea. It gave me a really good basis to build off of. I've never done this before. And I'm wiring a freaking car.
So if we can do it, you can do it.
Definitely.
But highly recommend the training course. So we're gonna keep going. So right now we've got all our sensors logged in and assigned on our computer. You can label each one, and now we can start stacking them. So when the pressure sensor at the turbo sees pressure, turn on the scavenge pumps. And when the engine temperature reaches a certain point, then turn on one fan. And if it hits a second point, then turn on the other fan, things like that. So we'll get into that.
You could even, after you turn off kill the ignition, to run the water pump for a few seconds just to make sure you don't get any hot.
You can do that?
The ignition switch is only a trigger switch. There's still power to the ECU.
Right. I hope it actually does it. Otherwise the first
I'm
thing
pretty
we said.
sure it does.
So-
I'm pretty sure it does.
All right, we'll find out. We got to keep going. Here we go.